Coming up on Primetime News, South Korea expresses deep regret over the North's comments, slamming President Park Geun-hye's speech at the UN and threatening to cancel war-separated family reunions. Controversy flares in the domestic political arena over a set of election rule agreements reached by rival party leaders over the Chuseok holiday. We take a look at some of the key issues involved. And as Volkswagen says it will announce plans to fix 11 million cars it cheated with emissions tests. Here in Korea, some car owners filed the first lawsuit against the German automaker. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Wednesday, September 30th. I'm Hwang Ji-hye.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Good to have you with us. North Korea has harshly criticized President Park Geun-hye's speech to the UN General Assembly this week, threatening to cancel the upcoming reunions for war-separated families.
South Korea has expressed deep regret over such statements and urged Pyongyang not to turn its back on humanitarian issues. Kim Hyun-bin has our top story.
South Korea's Unification Ministry on Wednesday voiced regret at Pyongyang's threat to cancel the planned separated families reunion and called on the North not to back out on already agreed humanitarian issues.
The South Korean government urges the North to stop denouncing and criticizing President Park's UN speech and comply with the high-level talks agreed to in August. Pyongyang should not turn away from humanitarian issues like the separated families reunion, threatening it for political and military means.
North Korea slammed President Park Geun-hye for her speech this week at the United Nations, in which she warned Pyongyang about the consequences of further provocations. North Korea's committee in charge of inter-Korean relations said President Park has spewed out thoughtless words that attack Korea's own people and set the two Koreas at odds on the global stage. The committee claimed the speech ruined North-South relations when they were just beginning to thaw. It went on to say that President Park's speech, in the name of peace, reflected her ambition to reunify the Koreas by absorbing the North into the South with the help of foreign countries. It also said the South Korean leader had jeopardized planned reunions for families separated by the Korean War. The meetings are scheduled to be held at North Korea's Mount Kumgang Resort from October 20th to the 26th. Meanwhile, President Park said on Monday that Seoul would fully support North Korea in developing its economy and improving the quality of life of its people if the regime abandons its nuclear program. The two Koreas made a landmark agreement last month to hold high-level inter-Korean talks in Seoul or Pyongyang as soon as possible. But experts say this too looks murky as the atmosphere turns hostile on the peninsula. On top of North Korea's possible launch of a long-range rocket to coincide the 70th anniversary of the founding of its ruling Workers' Party. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And ahead of that key political anniversary, top diplomats from Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo agree on strong countermeasures against any future provocations from Pyongyang. Song Ji-sun has the details.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se met with his U.S. and Japanese counterparts, John Kerry and Fumio Kishida, on Tuesday to reaffirm their stance that any provocative action from Pyongyang will further isolate the communist state from the international community. The three stressed any violation of a UN Security Council resolution will incur further significant measures, which would include both economic and diplomatic sanctions, and that the Security Council has begun working-level studies into reviewing measures that will be stronger than before and much more detrimental to the North.
There will be stronger sanctions on top of the current ones. These will be based on what kind of hostile action North Korea takes. If the North launches a provocation, members of the UN Security Council and other related countries will start discussing the measures.
Ahead of its ruling party's 70th anniversary on October 10th, Pyongyang has been threatening to push forward with a rocket launch that is, quote, aimed at putting satellites into orbit. But UN Security Council resolutions ban such attempts as they're more likely covers for testing long-range missiles. The three sides also share some common ground, that Japan's exercise of its collective self-defense should be carried out in a transparent manner that respects South Korea's sovereignty. Tokyo recently passed new security legislation allowing its self-defense forces to fight overseas in the name of aiding allies, which, in the event of war with North Korea, could enable Japanese forces to enter the Korean peninsula in the name of helping the U.S. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye is back in Seoul now after expanding South Korea's diplomatic presence in the largest UN gathering of world leaders. Much of her trip was focused on issues surrounding North Korea. Hwang Ji-hye reports.
After wrapping up her 4-day stay in New York, President Park Geun-hye arrived in Seoul on Wednesday. The main event of her trip was attending the 70th UN General Assembly. There, she used her keynote speech as an opportunity to sway North Korea from making further provocations. Her trip came amid Pyongyang's nuclear threats and speculation of a possible long-range rocket launch next month.
북한이 과감하게 핵을 포기하고 개방과 협력의 길로 나온다면 대한민국은 국제사회와 힘을 모아 북한이 경제를 개발하고 주민들의 삶의 질을 향상시킬 수 있도록 적극 지원할 것입니다.
She stressed the importance of reunification, saying it would ultimately lead to a nuclear-free Korean peninsula. Much of President Park's trip was also spent introducing the so-called Semaul movement, an initiative that led the modernization of South Korea's rural economy in the 1970s.
By adapting to the distinct needs of countries and to the changing times, the Semaul 운동 can become a strategy for rural development globally and for progress nationally.
As part of her agenda, President Park pledged to expand South Korea's role in global efforts for sustainable development, starting with a donation of $200 million over the next 5 years to ensure a better life for girls growing up in developing countries. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye and her Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin exchanged messages on Wednesday to celebrate 25 years of diplomatic ties. She said the relationship that started in 1990 is a mutually beneficial and future-oriented one, while Putin said the partnership on regional and international issues would help build peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. President Park also expressed hope in creating more synergy from Korea's Eurasia Initiative and Russia's Far East Development Plan. Her Eurasia Initiative, proposed in 2013, aims to boost the regional economy through free trade and economic cooperation in the Eurasian bloc with a Trans-Siberian Railway project plan that links Europe through the two Koreas. Staying with Korea-Russia relations, while the two sides' economic partnership has grown enormously, experts say it's more about volume, not value. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
With the official Korea-Russia partnership beginning in 1990, the two have been steadily expanding economic ties. Official data compiled since 1992 shows that trade up to last year jumped more than 130 times to almost $26 billion. That's an average annual growth rate of 25%. In 2014, Russia was Korea's 12th biggest export partner and 11th biggest import partner. For Russia, Korea was the 9th biggest importer.
On the whole, experts evaluate the quarter century as successful in terms of the amount of economic cooperation, but not too much when it comes to the value of that partnership.
According to a report by the Korea International Trade Association Wednesday, when comparing the amount of trade with Russia, the amount of investment is very small. Russia has only invested $190 million into Korea during the 25-year span. At $2.2 billion, Korea's investment in Russia accounted for just 0.4% of its total outbound investment. Experts say a virtual cycle of trade and investment needs to be established and that Korea's export strategy to Russia needs revision. Many shipments to Russia shrunk last year, especially as Russia's economy was dented by sanctions from Western nations due to the Ukraine crisis, including Korea's top export items to the country: automobiles, medicines and medical supplies, and automotive parts.
We have to distribute goods more effectively by regions within Russia, not see it as one country. We should target big cities close to Europe with consumer goods and approach the Far Eastern region with investment, as President Putin is showing strong interest in infrastructure development.
Analysts also say it's time that a free trade agreement be implemented to boost the bilateral partnership in the coming years. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Turning to local politics, there was an unexpected agreement among rival party leaders over the Chuseok holiday. But with that behind us, we're back at square one as lawmakers resume normal function, locking horns over plans to change election rules. Ji Myung-gil has more.
Saenuri Party chief Kim Moo-sung said Wednesday that the ruling party will create a special consultation body to discuss adopting a new form of an open primary system.
Our party has decided to create a special body to discuss making a new variation of an open primary. And we will also discuss the public nomination system that uses secure numbers.
Kim also said the presidential house of Cheongwade should not insult a party's leader and told lawmakers who are loyal to President Park Geun-hye to refrain from offensive remarks. Earlier on the day, the presidential office criticized the adoption of the nomination system using secured numbers, as it could distort public opinion and work in favor of heavyweight candidates. Meanwhile, the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy called for the ruling party's support of the bipartisan agreement.
I cannot understand why some ruling party lawmakers are making irrelevant remarks. I hope the National Assembly Special Committee on Political Reform will start drawing up bills to implement the system.
Moon urged the ruling party to continue discussions regarding the introduction of a new proportional representation system and the creation of guidelines for rezoning constituencies. However, the MPAD's minority faction lawmakers also opposed the agreement, saying it fails to clarify what an open primary based on a secured number is. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
And now more about this nomination system based on secured numbers, about how it works and what are the controversies surrounding it. We turn to our Park Ji-won.
The leaders of Korea's main rebel parties agreed during the Chuseok holiday that the two parties will adopt a candidate nomination system for next year's general elections that's similar to a U.S. open primary system, but which has also supplemented the weakness of the system. A so-called secure number open primary means participants, both party members and non-party members, can vote for a candidate of their own choice through mobile phone polling, the number of which is concealed during the voting process. For the candidate selection system to work, Korea's mobile service carriers like SKT and KT need to cooperate with the parties to conceal a voter's phone number. The system is known to be free from any manipulation, as the number samples are randomly chosen, free from any privacy concerns of participants, and also reduce costs for the nomination process compared to polling at actual polling stations. However, controversy remains over whether the system is safe from all possible problems. The presidential office expressed concerns the system could distort the public's intentions. The presidential office said phone polling is fundamentally different from the real, actual voting process. It added the system cannot guarantee fair voting and is open to possible manipulation. The presidential office also said the system could actually increase rather than reduce costs for the candidate selection process, making it a waste of public money. Korea's Minor Justice Party and those in the opposition bloc aiming to create a new party in coming months also expressed opposition to the system, saying it will only favor candidates with an existing public awareness. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
For the second consecutive year, Korea's position in the World Economic Forum's report on global competitiveness remains static. And while Korea's macroeconomic environment earned a positive appraisal, the nation's rigid financial and labor sectors continue to drag heavily on the overall ranking. For more, let's turn to our Lee Ji-won.
Korea placed 26th overall among 140 countries surveyed in the World Economic Forum's latest Global Competitiveness Index. The ranking is unchanged from last year. Korea ranked 29th in 2004 and rose to as high as 11th 3 years later. However, just as its entry into the top 10 was in sight, Korea's position tumbled to 24th in 2011. In this year's report, Korea saw its ranking in macroeconomic environment rise by 2 notches to 5th place, scoring high in annual inflation, country credit rating, and government budget balance. Asia's 4th largest economy also earned high marks for having a high educational level, broadband internet subscriptions, and patent applications. In particular, due to deregulation efforts, the evaluation on starting businesses shot up from 32nd to 8th place. However, Korea's labor and financial markets are still falling behind, dragging the country's ranking down. Korea's cooperation between labor and management ranked bottom at 132nd, while soundness of banks ranked a lowly 113th. Transparency of government policymaking stood at 123rd, while efficacy of corporate boards was 120th, signaling the country's conglomerates are still largely controlled by certain families. Some experts say Korea needs structural reforms more urgently than improvements in the labor market and an injection of capital investments.
Korea's social, economic and political structures need reform to become more efficient in order to increase economic productivity more than anything. Unless we break the traditional structures, not only will our competitiveness suffer, but our economic growth as well.
The expert added, along with the structural reforms, small steps such as flexibility in the labor market and change in the business model of financial firms would help increase Korea's global competitiveness. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
Smart shoppers in Korea are ready to shop till they drop. America's retail phenomenon known as Black Friday has reached Korea's shores. Thousands of stores will be slashing prices by up to 70% for the country's own version from Thursday. The government hopes Korea's biggest ever sales event will boost consumer spending and make up for the country's slowing exports and slow growth, unlike the U.S. Black Friday sales will run for 2 weeks until October 14th. Around 26,000 stores are taking part, including local markets, department stores, and online shopping malls. Volkswagen has announced that it will begin the process of recalling its cars with the emission rigging software installed. This as lawsuits against the German automaker are beginning to pile up around the world. Hwang Ji-hye takes a look.
Volkswagen is getting ready for a long and expensive process of recalling its cars.
I will inform the Commissioner for Industry about our planned measures, how we will be in contact with our customers in the next days and weeks, and above all about which measures we are proposing to the authorities within which time frames for solving customers' problems.
When asked how much the recalls would cost the company, he was unable to give an answer. Meanwhile, in Korea, the government is set to begin its own testing of Volkswagen cars on Thursday.
If the test results confirm that there is a problem, we will consider expanding our tests to other cars.
Many Volkswagen owners in Korea have been left wondering how this was ever possible.
Previously, the technology to perform effective road tests didn't exist. There have been previous instances of emission numbers being faked, but we had never seen it being done this way.
Nevertheless, industry experts say this has been expected for quite some time now.
If the test results confirm that there is a problem, we will consider expanding our tests to other cars.
In the US and Canada, the public have already taken their anger to the courts, with dozens of lawsuits having already been filed against the German automaker. Volkswagen owners in Korea have also followed suit. The first lawsuit in Korea against Volkswagen was filed here today at the Seoul Central District Court. More are expected here and elsewhere around the world. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
And now for international headlines, we turn to our Bruce Harrison at the News Center.
Today's focus: Russia's legislature grants President Vladimir Putin power to use military force in Syria. China admits to arresting 2 Japanese on spying charges, and U.S. government whistleblower Edward Snowden speaks up on social media.
Well, Bruce, let's start with Putin's decision against Syria.
Well, so far his plans appear to be limited just to airstrikes. Parliament's Chief of Staff Sergei Ivanov said the goal of the operation is exclusively air support for Syrian government troops as they battle the Islamic State and other rebel groups. Ivanov wouldn't say when the strikes would take place or for how long or the kinds of planes and weapons the Russian Air Force would use. He did say that Parliament unanimously approved military action after Syrian President Bashar Assad asked for assistance.
We believe this request by the President and the position he has taken and declared at the UN General Assembly is the only adequate, the only right, and the only direct answer to the most difficult situation Syria found itself in.
Russia has reportedly sent military experts to a new center in Baghdad that is coordinating airstrikes and ground troops in Syria. The United States and France have already been targeting Islamic State forces in airstrikes in Syria. China has arrested 2 Japanese men for spying, though there are few details yet emerged about the charges. The Japanese government confirmed the 2 men have been held since May. Japan's Asahi newspaper said one man was arrested near China's border with North Korea and the other in the eastern province of Zhejiang near a military facility.
Appropriate support measures are being taken through diplomatic establishments based on Japanese law.
The Japanese daily said Beijing appears to be looking into whether the men were instructed to spy by the Japanese government. Suga said the Japanese government is certainly not involved in any kind of spying. In 2000, four Japanese nationals were temporarily detained in China in 2010. They were suspected of entering a military zone and taking photographs without permission. Exile isn't keeping Edward Snowden from gaining new supporters. The U.S. government spy agency whistleblower launched a Twitter account and gained nearly 350,000 followers within hours. Snowden was a National Security Agency contractor who leaked details about the U.S. government's massive surveillance programs. During a recent video conference, he said nothing is private from the government, including brief chats with friends and family to online book browsing.
All of these things are being tracked, they're being intercepted, they're being recorded.
After the data leak, Snowden fled the United States in May 2013 and has been living in exile in Russia. In Snowden's Twitter profile, he says he used to work for the government and now he works for the public. Those are today's stories. Good night.
The last day of September wrapped up under gray skies in the capital, while it was a rainy day for Jeju and the southern regions. And the first day of October is shaping up to be a rainy one for the entire nation. Up to 150 millimeters of downpours are expected for Jeju and the southern coastal regions, and 30 to 140 central parts and 5 to 40 in the upper areas. And here in Seoul, rain will pick up during the morning rush hour, so you might want to leave early to work and expect to spend some extra minutes on the road. But unlike the southern regions, rain will let up by mid-afternoon. And today was probably the warmest day of the season. Things are about to get much cooler starting tomorrow, with the mercury only getting up to the low 20s here in the capital and dropping down to 11 degrees Celsius by Friday morning. On that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for tomorrow. Seoul and Gwangju will only rise to 22, while Daegu and Busan picking to 24. And as for the other regions, Daejeon and Jeju Island will see a high of 22 and 28, while Dokdo rises to 21. Well, that's all for the weather. Good night.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. Thank you for staying with us.
We will be back same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.